Welcome back to another episode of Reflections from WT, the heart and soul of the Texas Panhandle. My name is Randy Ray. I am the Director of Broadcast Engineering on the campus of West Texas A&M, and I am once again honored to welcome back the 11th President of West Texas A&M, Dr. Walter Wendler.
Thanks, Randy. It's good to be here, as always.
Well, we are winding down.
We are.
The semester is coming to a close. What are some highlights you think of this last semester?
Well, one of them, to be certain, and I wouldn't always talk about this first, but the ending of our longstanding tradition at Kimbrough is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
I think it's really important that as we move the football program onto the campus, I think people will be able to enjoy it a little bit more easily. And I think it's going to be a very important magnet on Saturdays. I can imagine the various colleges opening up one or two times during the fall to have open houses and, invite in alumni and so on. And I know here in Fine Arts and Humanities, with the marching band housed here, that's been an important part of the tradition of Kimbrough. And I think it's just I'm looking forward to next year. I don't know what it's going to be like, but it's going to be, I know this, it is going to be different.
It will be different. That was the thing that I thought about at our last game out at Kimbrough. It was kind of bittersweet to me. It was a sad time, but yet it's a happy time as well.
I think so too. And I've even had, for over a year, we looked at and studied and made sure that we understood the kind of costs and benefits of moving from the off-campus stadium to on-campus, because there was a lot of discussion and consternation over that. And I believe when people see it, this new stadium, and experience a game or two there, they're going to say, we should have done this 10 years ago, because it's going to be such a different kind of experience. My thankfulness in all of this is we have an excellent university here with programs that are responsive to many forces. Most important to me of those forces is the top 26 counties of Texas and the people of the Texas Panhandle. And we never have to apologize for that. We've got an excellent university here, and I want people, when they come for something like a football game, to be able to get a sense of what the rest of the campus is about. So I'm very excited about that. I met a fellow, I won't say who it is, but years ago, when I first got here, almost 3 years ago now, and he told me, he said, the challenge with the football program in the stadium out there at Kimbrough, he said, 3,000-4,000 people drive down to Canyon from Amarillo to watch a football game. Then they get in their cars and they drive back to Amarillo. Now there's a reason to come on campus. As a matter of fact, you can't watch a football game without coming on campus. And I just think that's going to be a special experience. And it really is in the middle of the campus.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we get a sense of that when we have like the homecoming parade come through campus, and just that feeling of that entire day is so exciting. And we're going to be able to do that every game day.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I had a person sit with me on at the last game, and he told me he played football here, but he finished his career in 58, which is before they even moved to Kimbrough. So he remembers the on-campus, and he said, I liked it. Even in that old stadium we had, that was, not very nicely done and all that. It was old and kind of falling apart. A little bit like the edges of Kimbrough are now. They need some attention. But I'm absolutely convinced that the Canyon Independent School District is going to do a good job, because, the bond issue, the attention to the increasing needs of the people of the city of Canyon, and in fact Amarillo, because there's a lot of the people that attend Canyon schools that actually live in the city limits of Amarillo. I just think it's all going to be nicely worked out so that everybody wins.
I agree. I want to shift gears a little bit here. I'm going to throw a question at you. You might not be ready for. You ready?
I'm ready for anything. I dare you. Try and catch me.
Have you always wanted to be an administrator?
No, not really. It happened along the way. I achieved a dream that started in about 1985 or 6 while I was on the faculty at Texas A&M. I thought it might be nice to be the dean of the College of Architecture there. I knew the dean. I worked closely with the various people in the college, and I thought that might be a nice thing to do. And I never really focused on it. I focused on teaching, and I wanted to be a good teacher. And I don't mean to brag, but I was a good teacher. I won a lot of awards, and I wrote a lot about teaching in studio environments, tutorial teaching, the difference between that and kind of didactic lecture teaching and so on. And then in 92, I became the dean, and I thought, gosh, this is a dream come true for me, and in some ways a life dream. I was a kid. That was 1992. It's now 2018. And I would have never at that time thought I would be a campus executive. But in a lot of ways, it's a little bit like being an architect, which is my discipline in this sense. I mean, what architects do is try to project into the future and meet a set of needs that exists in a client or a client's organization and put all that together in a way that works to serve the client's aspirations. University president does about the same thing, except we're dealing with human capital rather than bricks and mortar. Mm-hmm. But I'm challenged by it every day. I thank God every day that I have the opportunity to do this. And a question that is really even more amazing to me is, did I always want to be an administrator in West Texas? I mean, I'd been to West Texas a couple of times. Back in the late 90s when I was working in the system offices, because I was doing long-range planning, and I'd come up and see Russell. I worked on a fairly regular basis with Barry Thompson. But I'd come up and see Russell Long, and I didn't think much of West Texas. I'd come in, do my little thing, and then go back to College Station. And now, this is the best job I've ever had and the best place I've ever lived. And I would have never predicted it, ever.
Well, the Panhandle gets in your blood,
yeah,
I think.
It didn't take long for me.
Yeah. Well, you spoke about work for the A&M system. On September 1st, 1990, West Texas State University, which is the college that I attended, became West Texas A&M University. What do you think that has done for WT?
Well, I think it's been very positive. And as I understand history, there was a move to try to get it associated with Texas Tech, but Texas Tech, I was told this, was not that interested back in, 87 or 88 or something like that, in the late 80s, I'll say. And Boone Pickens was the board chair, I think, at the time. Maybe not at the time of the actual affiliation that was created. But Pickens, I think, thought it was a good idea. And many of the other people on the board thought it was a good idea. And I've, as you know, I traveled around and visited schools all over the top 26 counties of Texas. And the superintendent at Sunray had a West Texas State University degree on the wall and a West Texas A&M University. And I told him, man, that's really cool. He said, my wife graduated between or at the time of the change, and her degree says West Texas State University and West Texas A&M University. So they have three different kinds of degrees, all from within the period of time where the change. I think it's a good change. I think that we provide opportunities to Texas A&M that they otherwise wouldn't have because they're located on this ground up here that is nearly holy to me because of the history of it and the kind of what it's done in the natural resource environment, petroleum industry, cattle industry. There's just this. As I tell people, you go to Houston, you might as well be in Los Angeles. It's an international city in many ways. But if you want to see what West Texas is about, and in fact what Texas is about, you need to go to Amarillo. That's where you go. Not Houston or Dallas. Those are world cities. This is a Texas city, and it's still a Texas city. And I basically pray every day that it remains a Texas city. Yeah. It's got all the best of what Texas is in it, and some of the shortcomings too. But it is Texas. It
is. They're saying is the real Texas.
Yeah,
Amarillo is the real Texas, and I agree with that. Well, that's interesting. So we've talked about West Texas A&M, we've talked about West Texas State. Before that, it was West Texas Normal College, and we had a very famous instructor here at that time. And after our break, we're going to talk to someone that's going to tell us a little bit more about that famous instructor. We'll be back right after this.
West Texas A&M University is a student body that learns by doing and is always seeking opportunity. Talented and accomplished faculty that teach both in and out of the classroom. Programs that provide timeless information and meet the challenges of today's world. Facilities rich in technology as well as WT history. It's our alumni and donors that make the big difference and set us apart from other universities. With your support, WT will continue to award scholarships to deserving students and strengthen our programs, which means a better campus, more in-depth education, and a lasting cultural and economic impact on our region. Now is the time to strengthen connections. Support students and open doors for tomorrow's leaders. Share your experience. Share your heritage. Share your pride.
Welcome back to Reflections from WT, the heart and soul of the Texas Panhandle. We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Walter Wendler, and we have a special guest with us today. We are joined by Dr. Amy von Lintel, who is an author, professor, and has an interesting story to tell about some of her research. So, Amy, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And you pronounced my name right. So kudos to you. Yeah, so at the end of the last segment, you mentioned this famous instructor who worked here. And what we're talking about is O'Keeffe, Georgia O'Keeffe. And what's nice about, I think also in the last segment, you said something about the Panhandle getting into your blood. And that has been so true for me. I'm not from here. But when I moved here, I was studying things far afield from O'Keeffe and the Panhandle. And ever since I started here in 2010, the projects have just presented themselves. And so I'm now fully a scholar of modern and contemporary art of the Texas Panhandle. And I tend to find the artists that made their way here for a short time or a longer time and work on them. And O'Keeffe is one of them. She worked here from 1916 to 1918, so not super long, but she did a lot of work when she was here. And I've published one book on her watercolors because that's the medium she was working within when she worked at WT. She was also the head of the art department, but it was a department of one. However, she was very proud to be a faculty member at that time. She was a single woman. She wasn't being supported by her family, and she moved here for the job and did well here. And the book that I'm working on right now that I'm really excited about is about her writings. So she wrote prolifically but privately, and her letters from Canyon, there's several hundred of them. So I'm editing a volume on those letters that overlaps with World War I. And we really get a good sense of the home front in Middle America during the war from those letters, as well as many other things. We learn about O'Keeffe's life, but also about life on the campus and what it was like for, a young professor here, and how car culture started to pick up at that time. There's all kinds of stuff you can learn about that.
I mean, let me ask you this. When she lived in Canyon, she lived over on Fifth Avenue in a home that was owned by Dr. Shirley, and she was not really accepted by the community. Right.
I think that's more of a myth. I think there were certain people who she was a bit scandalous for, but others, like Dr. Shirley, had her back. And the president of the university at the time had her back, Robert Bartow Cousins. So in her letters, we discover how many people were supporting her progressive ideas about teaching. And she wasn't teaching painting. She was teaching drawing and fashion design, which is kind of interesting because she was dressed in a
all black most of the time.
Progressive way at a time, women were still wearing corsets, and she was wearing flat shoes and dresses, but still bringing in the modern woman to Canyon in the 1910s. So yes, I think she ran like crosswise with a few people, but I don't think she was rejected at all. I think she was actually beloved by her students.
And is it true that when she was living in Canyon, she mostly painted in watercolors?
Yes,
right?
That is very true. She did a few oils. The Panhandle Plains has one of her oils, and if you go over there and look at it, and it's actually been converted into a three-dimensional, touchable image. I don't know if you'd call it an image, object for the visually impaired. So you can go over and feel it. But it is one of her lumpiest paintings because she hadn't gotten the oil down yet. And so it is something that you can actually feel. But for the most part, she did over 100 watercolors.
Yeah, my favorite one that she did is in the Amarillo Museum of Art.
Which one?
The
train
coming into town.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
we
still see the train coming into town, but here there were a lot less things to block her vision, and she watched that train come in, and she would get on the train to go to Amarillo, or she'd get on the train to go back to New York, and the train was just a part of her life, and that is a very beautiful watercolor.
Yeah,
and one of the things about Amarillo Museum of Art, that I'll plug is it's not always out, but they will always pull it out for anyone who wants to go see that work of art.
Yeah. So we talked about Georgia O'Keeffe. I'm going to throw you a curveball now.
Oh, good.
You ready?
Maybe.
You ready? So I understand that you have written a little bit about Harry Potter.
Yeah, oh gosh, you looked that up. Yeah, totally. I'll talk about Harry Potter.
So tell me about that.
Okay.
Are you a Harry Potter fan?
I am a Harry Potter fan, but compared to the Harry Potter fans that I have gone to conferences with, I am very minimally a Harry Potter fan. I've read the books. I've seen the movies. I find Harry Potter, and this is one thing that I got really interested in after attending the Southwest Popular Culture Conference in Albuquerque. There's like a Harry Potter section there, so all the fans congregate. They don't dress up yet, but it's a very interesting experience. But the leaders of that conference, their argument is that Harry Potter can be used pedagogically in really innovative ways. So we can teach about identity politics. We can teach about the article or chapter that I wrote with a woman that I met at that conference is about the power of vision and images. And so you know how in Harry Potter the images move? So I was thinking about like how that can be something that educates us about the power of images on screens, like our screens on our phone or our screens on computers. And one of the things I studied in graduate school is visual studies, not just art objects, but any kind of visual things, visual communication. So it gave me a way to kind of write theory through Harry Potter that students at the undergraduate level can approach. So yeah,
very, very interesting. You are the author of 2 books already. Is that right?
I am a co-author of a book on Robert Smithson in Texas. I am the author of the Georgia O'Keeffe Watercolors book. And
you're currently working on another one, is that right?
I'm working on 2 more. One is the writings book on O'Keeffe's writings in Texas that has to do with World War I. And the other one is another co-authored volume with Dr. Bonnie Roos of the English department. And like that Panhandle Gets in Your Blood thing back in Panhandle Artists here. So we've discovered that abstract expressionist artists from mid-century New York, women, were having trouble getting sales and gallery representation in New York. And they hooked up with a dealer in this area who had a huge network of students. And they started coming here and teaching and selling their art here. So it's Elaine de Kooning, Louise Nevelson, and Jean Reynaud. The third is lesser known, but the other 2 are pretty well known among art circles. So we're tracking their Western experiences and their Western markets. And, I'm just headed out on a road trip, coming up, and we're going to go see some of the works in private collections that I have never seen that aren't published. And that's one of the things that we're tracking.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that art is really a big part of our culture here.
A big part of our
culture. Yeah, and when you look at modern artists like Jack Sorensen or Kenneth Wyatt, I think they are a big part of the Texas Panhandle. And I think when you look at the history of the Panhandle, it's bigger than most people realize.
Well, what I think is interesting, you have Western art that is predominant here, but then you also have aspects of modern and contemporary art that have touched the Panhandle, but people haven't recognized it. So in my field, there's a number of famous artists who traveled through here and who were touched by this area and built their whole career on an image that they saw here. So like Ed Ruscha, a pop artist out of California, but he would travel on Route 66, and he saw one of our Standard Oil stations. That became the basis of his entire series on the Standard Oil stations and, gas stations across the West. So what my argument is, I'm always interested in how this area it gets in your blood or imprints itself on these people who might have spent a few sessions here or a year here, or you don't have to live here your whole life to really be affected by this area. So that's one of the things I'm really interested in. So our argument basically is that you got to open up modern and contemporary art beyond the coasts. You have to look at Middle America. You have to look at the transcontinental U.S. to really get the picture.
And you've got to look at the Panhandle.
You've got to look at that Panhandle. Yeah,
all
put
right,
it on your radar.
Yeah. So Dr. Wendler, we are winding up the semester. Do you have Christmas plans?
Well, we don't have any firm plans right now, which is typically the case around Christmas, but it will be spent quietly. It will be spent reflectively. Mary and I and our families reflect on our faith and in that season very deeply. And I imagine at least one of the families will come, maybe both. So we'll be here on campus, and it's very quiet.
Don't you agree with me that Christmas time is a great time to visit the campus?
Yes, I do. I just said quiet, and that's one of the things that's nice about it. It's largely unpopulated. I mean, it's just quiet. And as an architect, for me, I get a chance to see the campus and its structure and form and so on from the buildings and the trees and the landscape and everything. And it's I find it to be a very nice time and much different than the summer or spring. It's just a much different place, and it's one of the beauties of the Panhandle. There are 4 seasons here. And our campus shines in every one of them.
Yeah, and we want all of our listeners to know that the campus is always open to visitors. So anytime anyone wants to come see us, we would welcome them.
That's absolutely correct. And if they call early enough and they're going to be, maybe their travel plans bring them through town. This is West Texas A&M University. If their travel plans bring them through town on December 29th, my guess is we can find somebody to meet them and talk with them even on December 29th.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I want to thank you both for being with me today. Dr. Von Lintel, thank you for that very interesting reflection on George O'Keeffe and what you're doing for all of our students on campus. Thank you for what you do. Yeah. Dr. Wendler, I'm excited about next time. Our next podcast, we're going to ask a student to come in here and talk to us, and we'll get some reflections of what they think the semester is like.
That's great. Sounds good to me, Randy.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining Reflections from WT, the heart and soul of the Texas Panhandle. Please join us again next time. We'll see you then.